Good morning. Protagoras, day 6. With these facts in mind, Protagoras, I do not believe that virtue can be taught. But when I hear you speaking as I do, my skepticism is shaken, and I suppose there is truth in what you say, for I regard you as a man of wide experience, deep learning, and original thought. A man of wide experience, deep learning, and original thought. I used to write down everything that I found beautiful before I started recording, because it's a bit awkward writing while I'm recording, but I miss that. I like copying beautiful words. A man of wide experience, deep learning, and original thought. I do think original thought is overrated. That just goes smoke from my head. If then you can demonstrate more plainly to us that virtue is something that can be taught, please don't hoard your wisdom, but explain. I shall not be a miser, Socrates, he replied. Now shall I, as an old man speaking to his juniors, put my explanation in the form of a story, or give it now? Shall I, as an old man speaking to his juniors, put my explanation in the form of a story, or give it as a reasoned argument? That's cute. I like Protagoras. Many of the audience answered that he should relate it in whichever form he pleased. What would you have chosen? Asking for a story feels kind of like you're taking your time to make love to someone. Or just asking for the arguments kind of feels like just getting it done with. Then I think, he said, it will be pleasanter to tell you a story. Ooh, yay, story time. Once upon a time, there existed gods, but no mortal creatures. When the appointed time came for these also to be born, the gods formed them within the earth, out of the mixture of earth and fire, and the substances which are compounded from earth and fire. And when they were ready to bring them to light, they charged Prometheus and Epimetheus with the task of equipping them and allotting suitable powers to each kind. Now Epimetheus begged Prometheus to allow him to do the distribution himself. And when I have done it, he said, you can review it. The one with only a view on what has been, that's not very wise. So he persuaded him and set to work. In his allotment he gave to some creatures strength without speed, and equipped the weaker kinds with speed. Some he armed with weapons, while to the unarmed he gave some other faculties, and so contrived means for their preservation. To those that he endowed with a smallness, he granted winged flight as a dwelling underground. To those which he increased in stature, their size itself was a protection. Thus he made his whole distribution on a principle of compensation, being careful by these devices that no species should be destroyed. When he had sufficiently provided means of escape from mutual slaughter, he contrived their comfort against the seasons sent from Zeus, clothing them with thick hair or hard skin sufficient to ward off the winter's cold, and effective also against heat. And he planned that when they went to bed, the same covering should serve as proper and natural bedclothes for each species. He shot them also, some with hooves, others with hard and boneless skin. Next he appointed different sorts of food for them, to some the grass of the earth, to others the fruit of the trees, to others roots. Some he allowed to gain their nourishment by devouring other animals, and these he made less prolific, while he bestowed fertility on their victims, and so preserved the species. Hence the famous fertility of bunnies. Now, Epimetheus was not a particularly clever person, and before he realized it, he had used up all the available powers on the brute beasts, and being left with the human race on his hands, unprovided for it, did not know what to do with them. It's so funny. It's almost the exact opposite of the biblical narrative, like man being the absolute main concern of creation. But this does feel more accurate. While he was puzzling about this, Prometheus came to inspect the work, and found the other animals well off for everything, but man naked, unshot, unbedded, and unarmed. And already the appointed day had come when man too was to emerge from within the earth into the daylight. Prometheus, therefore, being at a loss to provide any means of salvation for man, stole from Hephaestus, the god of making the instruments of the fireplace, the one who was thrown out by his mother because he was ugly, and then he broke his leg and he got even more ugly. And Athena, the gift of skill in the arts, together with fire. For without fire it was impossible for anyone to possess or use the skill. There's some actual truth in this as well, I think. I think the taming of fire was quite important in the man's cultural development, and bestowed it on man. In this way man acquired sufficient resources to keep himself alive, but had no political wisdom. This was in the keeping of Zeus, and Prometheus no longer had the right of entry to the citadel where Zeus dwelt. Moreover, the sentinels of Zeus were terrible, but into the dwelling shared by Athena and Hephaestus, in which they practiced their art, he penetrated by stealth, and carrying off Hephaestus' art of working with fire, and the art of Athena as well, he gave them to man. Through this gifts man had the means of life. But Prometheus, so the story says, thanks to Epimetheus, had later on to stand his trial for theft. Now, this is a very interesting and disturbing story, actually. So, first of all, man was made, or provisioned at least, by the Titans, not by the gods. So that demiurge idea also feels, rings a bell, some sort of bell here. And then the other side is, I've always seen in Prometheus the snake in the Garden of Eden, who tempted them to actually open their eyes, who gave them, because Genesis says, if they eat from the fruit they will become like us, in that they can know everything. So he gave them the power to be like the gods, like this fire that Prometheus stole. I actually had mentioned this to Jonathan Peugeot, and he totally agreed, only we see it from very different perspectives. In my story, Prometheus is the good guy, and in his story, of course, he's the bad guy. And I know that the Promethean spirit is associated with this progress idea. And hence, he is often seen as the bad guy. But he is actually the first sacrificial god, or Titan then, the one bigger than us, because he had to suffer severely for the gifts that he gave to mankind. Just as a snake had to suffer, quite honestly. Since then, man had a share in the proportion of the gods. Don't let them eat from the fruit, otherwise they'll be like us. In the first place, because of his divine kinship, he alone among living creatures believed in gods, and set to work to erect altars and images of them. Secondly, by the art which they possessed, men soon discovered articulate speech and names, and invented houses and clothes, and shoes and bedding, and got food from the earth. Thus provided for, they lived at first in scattered groups. I wonder how this relates to the teaching of wisdom or virtue. There were no cities, consequently they were devoured by wild beasts, since they were in every respect the weaker, and their technical skills, though a sufficient aid to their nurture, did not extend to making war on the beasts, for they had not the art of politics, of which the art of war is a part. Only when we work together can we conquer. They sought therefore to save themselves by coming together and founding fortified cities. But when they gathered in communities, they injured one another for want of political skill, and so scattered again and continued to be devoured. Zeus, therefore, fearing the total destruction of our race, sent Hermes to impart to men the qualities of respect for others and a sense of justice, so as to bring order into our cities and create a bond of friendship and union. So the fact that men decided to build altars and serve the god might have actually just saved them. Otherwise Zeus would not have cared, probably. Hermes asks Zeus in what manner he was to bestow these gifts on men. Shall I distribute them as the arts were distributed? That is, on the principle that one trained doctor suffices for many laymen. And so with the other experts, shall I distribute justice and respect for their fellows in this way, or to all alike? To all, said Zeus. Let all have their share. There could never be cities if only a few shared in these virtues, as in the arts. Moreover, you must lay it down as my law that if anyone is incapable of acquiring the share of these two virtues, he shall be put to death as a plague to the city. Respect for others and a sense of justice. Yep, that's basically what it boils down to. Thus it is, Socrates, and from this cause, that in the debate involving skill in building or in any other craft, the Athenians, like other men, believe that few are capable of giving advice, and if someone outside those few volunteer to advise them, then, as you say, they do not tolerate it, rightly so in my submission. But when the subject of their counsel involves political wisdom, which must always follow the path of justice and moderation, they listen to every man's opinion, for they think that everyone must share in this kind of virtue. Otherwise the state could not exist. That, Socrates, is the reason for this. Oh, so the question answered was not, is virtue teachable, but why do democracy think they can consult everyone on political matters, but not on matters of building or etc. Hope you have a beautiful day.